And there seems to be a theme. So Carolyn Beck is going to be giving the talk today and sends me a note that says, here's the title and that, and be brief. Last meeting, Don is it. I had the honor of introducing Don. The note that came was, be brief. Is there a theme going on here? So my target is to do it under 30 minutes. Because she said if I go over two, she's going to be embarrassed. So I have an absolute obligation to go past 2 minutes. So I was looking in the membership today. Leslie and I think, are the last remaining founding members in 1980. The Becks joined us in 1983, which would make them one of the most long-standing members in the society. I looked at Don's, and his was 1967. Well, we didn't even exist then. So he's a Back to the Future guy, which should not surprise you at all. But Carolyn's talk today is going to be on the Wrenwood Garden through the seasons. We just learned out they had named their garden, so I'm excited to learn the meaning of that garden. What I'm going to do, everybody knows Carolyn and Paul. That's almost like a single word. But there's a division of labor, and Carolyn has single-handedly made us the most solvent chapter in the entire society, and has made the society solvent because we have donated so much money to various other places. And so the couple of questions I'm hoping you talk to while you're going through, no pressure, is first of all, how did you find out about the Northern Virginia and join us? Because you were in so early before the word was really out there. And then when you started cuttings, who was your mentor? Who got you into this? Because they sure did a heck of a job. And then when you did that transition to go into production, the amount of plants you've done has got to get into the hundreds of thousands or more. And so think about it. Paul, what's your opinion? Hundreds of thousands? For maybe 100,001. So have I gone over 2 minutes? So I'm going to introduce Carolyn, one of the sweetest people that you will ever meet, one of the most productive people you'll ever meet. And in a perfect world, one of the most embarrassed people. Carolyn Beck. I love the microphone. I know I'll.
Okay, can you hear me? Oh, good. I want to welcome you to Wrenwood. This is going to be a mini tour of our garden, one that Paul and I built through the decades. And the name came from two components. One, we like birds, and the Carolina wren, which you see, is one of our favorite. And our garden is pretty much surrounded by woods. So we combined the two names and came up with Wrenwood. The first thing you see when you come down our long driveway is our water feature. It's two small ponds connected by a stream going downhill. And on the left side, there's a dwarf conifer bed. On the right side, there are two satsuki beds that are bisected by a mulched path, and that leads to the rest of our yard. This is the front of our house. It's evolved over lots of years. 1976 is when we moved in. And the style now is kind of a mixture. What it used to be is a colonial. This maple in the front provided a lot of shade to both the house and the satsuki bed that surrounded it. but it's no longer with us. Recently, we had a parkland tree, big oak, come crashing down in the middle of the night. And it did some damage to the house, not a huge amount, but it really smashed that maple and a lot of the satsuki. It also damaged beyond reclaiming a nice tall umbrella pine at the corner. So on a cheerier note, we'll talk about plants that might be of interest to you. And I'll start with the first things that bloom in our yard, which are hellebores. This one is a double yellow called lotus, golden lotus. And this is a single bicolor called Pikachu pink. The arrival of bulbs like this crocus always makes me happy. And the daffodils are also really neat to see coming up from the ground and so early in spring. This is Casada. Dinner plate. This one's called Ice King. The spring ephemerals arrive early. They only last for a couple of months before they go back underground. But I really like them. I really enjoy them while they're with us. This is a bloodroot. And a trillium cuneatum. And an underwoody eye. I like the variegated foliage. I think acerums are interesting plants, and this is Cicochianum. For us, the small-leafed rhododendrons are the first shrubs to bloom. Olga Mezit blooms reliably and heavily every year. I know that spring has arrived when she's putting on a show. This is April Rhapsody, another small-leafed rhododendron. The Japonica group of camellias are really showy. This is one called Brilliant. And my favorite, Dad's Pink. It also has solid dark red flowers. And Governor Mouton. This is one of the Pieris japonicas. The deer don't like them, but I do. I like their dangling clusters of bell-shaped flowers. And the early spring perennials. This is Epimedium, Be My Valentine. A dwarf bearded iris, probably only 8 inches tall. A foam flower called Spring Symphony with really airy flowers. And a bleeding heart called Gold Heart. The foliage is a golden green. This creeping phlox forms a weed smothering carpet. The main focus of our garden, of course, is azaleas. And since azaleas need partial shade, we've planted a lot of small to medium-sized trees. This one is a dwarf Japanese maple named Stella Rosa. And this one with the interesting architecture is Makawa Yatsubusa. I like the red buds for their curiously attached flowers right on the branches. And they bloom before the foliage emerges. This red bud has many different colors on the same plant. There's light green, almost a yellow green, to dark green. You can see there's a hint of apricot into orange, and it will maintain that on the new growth throughout the season. We have some deciduous magnolias. This one is a fairly tall tree called Sensation. A Coosa dogwood with variegated foliage. And the white in with the green just kind of lights up that corner of the garden. We have crepe myrtle. And this one is called Twilight. And a summer bloomer called a Shoals Creek chast tree. The chast trees have kind of a wonky growth habit, but if you prune them each spring, they'll produce these nice upright blue flowers when not much else is going on in the summer. For evergreen azaleas, we primarily grow the Klimowitz, Stewart's, Holly Springs, and Satsuki groups. The Klimowitz and the Stewart's primarily grow in early to mid-season, which for us is late April into early May. I'm going to show you some of the Klimowitz that we have in our garden. This one is Andrea Jean, named for our daughter. And Antoinette Martin, a really dynamic favorite. This is Bob Stewart, very tonal azalea. Joe named it for Bob Stewart, who is the hybridizer of the Stewart azaleas. Donald H. Voss. Donald Voss was very active in the Rhododendron Society. Everlasting Ella. That blotch is really eye-catching. James Scott. Mary Jane Cummings. And there's some cuttings of Mary Jane Cummings over there on the table. And Nancy Lynn. Very subtle coloration. After Bob named the first few dozen of his hybrids for family and friends, he expressed a wish to have the remainder named for people in the Azalea Society who had made significant contribution. And many of those people are in our chapter. This is Barbara Simone Kirkwood, named for our president. And Bill Miller, who's right back there. Bob Harrison and his wife, Eve Harrison. Now, some of these I noticed late this morning are a little out of order, but I think you'll be able to figure it out. This is Budney Ranke, who's president of the Ben Morrison chapter. And Carolyn and Paul. Bob decided that the purple flowers were Paul and the white ones with the purple markings for me. This is Dan Neckel and Joanne Neckel. David Meadows and Patsy Meadows. David Manning and Leslie. This is Mike White of White's Nursery in Maryland. And his wife, Deborah White. Dr. Ajit Thacker is one of our members. And Dr. Joseph Gutierrez. This is Hyatt Sprite, named for John Hyatt. And Jane Newman. Jane was one of the founding members of our chapter. Jean Boudry and Joe Klimowitz of Klimowitz Hybrid Fame. Lars E. Larson. And Margaret Vogel. McClellan Sunrise, named for George McClellan. Paul Beck. Anybody know him? Rick Bauer. And Susan Bauer. This is Ralph's Delight, named for Ralph Albegger. I don't have a good composite picture. This is a variable flowered plant. So this is one color group. And this is the other color group on the sampling. The next group of azaleas to bloom in our garden are the Holly Springs. They were hybridized by Pete Vines, who used to live in Springfield, Virginia. That's where he did the majority of his work. And they bloom primarily in mid to late season. This is Brocade Pillow. And Christy Gutierrez, one of Joe's daughters. Jacob Summers, he was the one that designed and implemented the Holly Springs Garden at the Jacobs Arboretum in Pennsylvania. And Nightingale. This is a sister seedling to Brocade Pillow. And Pete allowed me to select the name for this plant. I was a registered nurse for most of my adult life, so I thought of Florence Nightingale, and selected Nightingale as a way to honor her and the nursing profession. This is Peggy Vines, a very excellent flower form. He had said if he could only name one azalea, it would be this one for his wife. The Satsuki are late bloomers, late May, well into June. This is Benny Bowden. It's a double, which is unusual for Satsuki. Most of those are singles. This is Chidori. And by Nishiki. Get your tongue wrapped around that. It is quite variable. Very typical of most Satsuki. And here is one view. The second one. And the third, showing the variability. Joga has two different colors on the same plant, both with impressive blotches. And this is Kanjo. Kobai is one of my favorites. I like the full round petals. Often there are 6. And the very dark pink with irregular areas of white. This is Koyo, which came from California via Jim Trombley. And Nansako, which reminds me of orange sugar. Region. And another double called Saran. It has multiple levels of long strap petals. Side view of Saran. Senbazura is similar to Juho in that it blooms for 3 months. It starts off creamy white and matures to a greenish white, but it stays a good color throughout its whole bloom time. Three months. Very unusual, yes. This is Shunpo, another variable blooming Satsuki. And Suzu. Yamato has very dark green leaves that have a heavy texture. I like Yuho for its ruffled petals and impressive blotch. And here's Zuishi. It's hard to tell, but these are quite large flowers, maybe 4 inches. There are azaleas from other groups that I just couldn't resist including in our garden. This is an arome called Amelia Rose. Caprice, one of the moss holders, also called gold cup fruit. And Easter Parade, which is its sister seedling. David Waldman. And a karumi named Supu Iko. This is Marchy Point Hanky Panky. And it has margins that are dark pink and variable from flower to flower within the same plant. So here's one with a minimal amount of margin, a medium amount, and this one's almost entirely dark pink. Princess Connie is out of University of Maryland. And this is Rosa Belton Double, a Belgian Indian. Ryan Michael is a Bowie Mill, and it blooms heavily every spring. Sandra's Fancy is one of Sandra McDonald's hybrids, and it's quite variable. Satellite, another Belgian Indian by Kloppinger. Bakai Bisu, one of the Karumis. And Wee Willie, a Robin Hill. We also grow some deciduous azaleas. This is an arome called Country Cousin. And another arome called Sunstruck. Gregory Candy Stripe is a natural hybrid from Gregory Bald in North Carolina. And My Mary. Her fragrance is intoxicating. I can tell that she's starting to bloom before I even round the corner of the house. Spring Fanfare has really big blossoms. And they have some tints of red orange on their yellow flowers. This is a species, Vasii. This is a good pink selection. I find that rhododendron are much more difficult to grow than azaleas, but I have persisted because they make a good backdrop for azaleas. And their blooms are clustered together in nice big trusses. And I just find them a nice addition to the garden. This one is Advent. Bethany J. Cole's Pinwheel, one of the heritage plantation hybrids from Sandwich, Massachusetts. Dream of Kings with a really impressive blotch. Gilbert Myers with frilly edges. Great Smoky. Ingrid Melquist, quite a low growing plant. Kay Player, and Kenny Mack. Sandra McDonald grew this, and she named it for her late husband. This is Parker's Pink, one of the Dexters. And Rosa Marie, a McWhorter. Bob named this for his wife. Ruby Bowman and Shogun with a very, very dark red center. One of the few West Coast hybrids that I know will grow on the East Coast. This is one of Fujioka's hybrids called Silver Skies. And Smoky Mountain with its really impressive blotch. Some of our perennials bloom in late spring and into summer. We've planted a lot of these around the base of trees. This is Veronica Waterperry. It likes a bit of sun. And the blue-flowered leadwort that we planted under one of the crepe myrtles. I noticed there's one over on the table for the plant exchange. Turtle heads bloom later in the summer. This one is called Hot Lips. There are some of the perennials that I would enjoy having in the garden, even if they never bloomed, just because the foliage is so interesting. This is a Korean violet. And let me look at the name, Styletta pulmonaria or lungwort with dark green leaves splashed with various amounts of white, depending on the cultivar. The coral bells have come in a variety of colors. This one is called Sugar Plum and Electric Lime. This hosta is called Cherish. And one called Mini Skirt. Pure Heart. And Eternal Flame. We have dozens more different cultivars because they really, really make a nice addition to the garden. I pick those with heavier leaf texture because I think the snails and the slugs prefer the thinner leafed varieties. We have a number of shrubs in our garden that are not azaleas, and this one is a fuchsia. I think it might be the only one that's hardy in our area. This is a cascading variety called Santa Hints. There are several types of gardenias that bloom in our area. Herbaceous peonies come in a variety of colors. And tree peonies. This yellow one was a gift from Don Harley. Vines add a vertical dimension to the garden. This clematis is one that is growing actually on a taller evergreen, but it can be grown on a structure like a tower, or we've put some trellis type things up downspouts, and they're happy growing there. This is a trumpet honeysuckle, not the invasive type. This is a native. A close-up of the flower. This is a species, but there are hybrids in the trade also. This one's called Schizophragma hydrangioides, or Japanese hydrangea vine. And it's growing up a large tree, and the vine itself is probably up in the air 50 feet. During the summer, the conifers take center stage. This is a saguaro cypress in the mini conifer garden near the stream. It's called cumulus. And a Japanese hemlock named luit. You can see one of the Korean violets next to it. A dwarf milky cypress called Bess. And this is just dandy. This Canadian hemlock is positioned at the lower end of the stream, so the cascading branches can make their way down the rocks towards the lower pond. This is another dwarf milky cypress called Soweel, and a dwarf Alberta spruce named Lauren. This eastern white pine is called Bergman's Mini, but it's really more of a medium size than a mini. I think it might be 5 feet wide now. None of our neighbors are gardeners, so we don't have a nice view from within our yard. So what we've done is take some of the taller growing conifers, the magnolias, the evergreen southern magnolias, some taller rhododendron, hollies, and place them around the periphery. This is a saguaro cypress named Folifera, along with rhododendron. A Japanese cedar called Yoshino. And I think it's probably 60 feet tall. An arborvitae called Green Giant. And an evergreen southern magnolia named Miss Chloe. And she blooms mid to late summer. I like to add various artworks throughout the garden. This frog is sitting on a rock right next to the stream. And the turtle is positioned at the head of the upper pond. This is one of our Japanese lanterns. And this ceramic vessel quite large, nestled next to the Lamian, is a creation by Bill Pinkham of Norfolk, Virginia. I think he's quite an impressive artist. And wind spinners. They let us know when it's not safe to work outside. There are azaleas that bloom or rebloom in the fall. This one is an encore called Autumn Sunburst. Most of our perennials bloom in the spring and the summer, but this Hemiboea subcapitata blooms in the fall, as does this anemone Queen Charlotte. Fall brings its own interesting color. The foliage on many plants change and bring us joy. This is a Satsuki azalea named Shifuki, and a full moon maple named Green Cascade. This was a gift from David Meadows. Look at the impressive color on this Japanese maple, Baldsmith. We often think of winter as a time when the garden is kind of boring, but there can be points of interest at that time of year. The conifers especially have their nice foliage all year round. And some of the deciduous trees and shrubs can show us some interesting architecture that we can only appreciate after the leaves have fallen. And then we have snow and ice. This is the same My Mary you saw earlier, but she's covered in a blanket of snow. And here is My Mary again after an ice storm. So then it's time for spring to come again, which is my favorite season. And I wish you all happy gardening. Anybody have questions? Yes. Yes, I would say we have at least 200. Yay! Okay, well, thank you. You have a question? Oh. I think a neighbor may have told us. What was the second question? Oh. And Bob Stewart. Pete Vines and Bob Stewart were, I think, the ones that showed me the most about how to root azalea cuttings. Yes, Judy. I trim what calls my attention the most. The Satsuki, fortunately, have a growth habit typically that doesn't require a lot of pruning. Yes, Pat.
That's preparation, the year of growing small plants into solid items. Yes, I think it really benefit production. It's so.
Well, I'm taking cuttings right now. And Barry wrote an article that was in the Azalean about what happens to them after they're put into their pots. So they're put into plastic bags and they're put onto rolling racks, put out onto the driveway. And depending on whether it's a sunny day or a cloudy day, they're moved into what's more of a shady or a more sunny area. In the winter, if it goes below freezing, they come into the garage. The garage is about half of it or more is below grade, and the big doors are insulated, so it stays usually 50 degrees or above. And hopefully they're just in there for a night or two until the weather gets above freezing. This winter was terrible. They were in there for weeks and suffered badly for it. That's a question I'll refer to Don about, because I don't deal with mine again until the next spring when I uppot them. Don?
I've seen them in this videos maybe 4 weeks, but they're not ready to support themselves. They're really just start fairly soon.
So Don is saying 4 to 6 weeks for the new roots to start growing, but you wouldn't want to transplant them until they're several months.
Or 2 or 3 years.
Or 2 or 3 years. Yeah.
I've seen them on the
Yeah. Carol Allen is saying she likes to wait until they've got a really solid root ball. Barry?
Yeah, I think my experience is there are little things that cannot be seen. And one got that is I know when I failed because the plant was collapsed in that piece. And all over the leaves are left on it, and yes, it was in 2 weeks, it was on I'm really good. And I think it's a good sense for keep going. But you only have to think about it, because our reason going to
So Barry's saying that often you can see the failure to root in a couple of weeks. But it's been my experience the next spring when I uppot them, that there will be a very nice, healthy looking top and then no roots. And vice versa, there may be a big root ball and no top. Very curious.
I've seen that. And I went to the valley. They were really,
Yes.
and now we do.
Oh, really? So if you don't take the flower bud out, they'll bloom, and sometimes that will cause the plant to die because it's just taking too much energy? Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't live late, so we did it in those accidents. Adding to their resources. That is very exciting, the rain that I've got. The feeling good. And then this.
Also, I have found that the blooms on the young plants, the really young plants, tend to be smaller. Very.
About two is showing me how the fish off from all of the stuff. It's stuff that is not really not. And they don't do that. It's just we follow it and
So he'd remove the flower buds from the rooted cuttings or the cuttings?
wherever he's gone.
Mhm. So, so removing the flower buds on the young plants will encourage more foliar and root development. Good. All right, thank you very much.